I don't know, maybe. I can't remember. I wrote this presentation, but I don't exactly remember it.
Do you want me to introduce you, or do you want to?
Sure, introduce me.
All right. Oh, yeah. I'd like to call everyone to order and welcome you to the ongoing Hidden Scholars Hall lecture series hosted by OCOM at the Lansing Chinese Garden. For those of you who have paid for your ticket in today, just so you know, you can deduct that from the cost of an annual membership, which is a very affordable, I think, $49. So, 25 for students, so that's a really significant discount, and part of the idea of being here every other Tuesday. I'm really excited to bring the speaker to you today, and particularly the topic, Kam-Wha Chung. This is kind of Dr. capstone presentation on patent medications of Kam-Wha Chung. So are you ready to take it away?
Let me just finish remembering
All
my
right.
pages. Moving to Duke Ellington.
We have 2 more lectures every other week. We have one on the water dragon, and I think Michael Berletic will be doing that one on the water dragon year and kind of how to stay well this astrological season. And also Dragon Bones and Legends, some of my favorite herb stories. So those will be in June. You ready now, Don? All right.
Going July 2.
Every other month through the calendar year.
Every other week.
Or sorry, every other week. Yes, every other week through the calendar year.
Thanks.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So-
There's more in a few minutes.
Meanwhile, should we fade out?
Yeah.
It'd be fun to do a whole lecture to that beautiful music. All right, good afternoon. So nice to see you all here today. I'm going to be reading from the script, but I'll be with you also at the same time. And I'm going to share with you some information about the wide world of traditional Chinese medicine. And we're going to look at some of the history of this wonderful ancient medicine that came very close to home right here in Oregon, probably a little longer ago than most of us have realized. And in honor of the month of May, welcome.
I think they wanted to come in.
Come on in.
Come on in.
Just getting started. So in honor of the month of May being the month of miniatures at the fabulous Lanfu Chinese Garden, I'll be, thank you, specifically focusing on these wonderful and sometimes mysterious seeming little bottles and tubes and packages that have made their way into our lives all these many miles and years from their time and place of origin. This is my first time using a PowerPoint too. It's really, really fun. So. I'm going to tell you a few stories that'll give you a taste of this history. So first we'll take a peek at the Kam-Wha Chung and Company historical site in John Day, and I'll tell you about some of the many kinds of prepared medicines that were found there, some of which are very familiar to us in the Chinese medicine field, and some of which we found rather more surprising. Here's another lovely image. Then we'll look at and smell and sample one particular kind of medicinal oil that was very strongly represented in the Kam-Wha Chung Medicinary, and which I personally have become very fond of since checking it out for myself in recent weeks. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about some of our best guesses to date about how the proprietors of the Kam-Wha Chung created such a successful business in their adopted home. And we'll see some of the strategies they used to make themselves known and welcome here, and how these little medicine bottles figured into that story. So let's begin, shall we? So here it is from the outside. This is an odd but unassuming building in a small town in the high desert of eastern Oregon. The proprietors of the place, Inghe and Lalan, came separately from near each other in China. And if you like, you can imagine, originally there was a picture here of eastern China. All right, so that's where they came from. During a time of terrific unrest and danger in their homeland. There was civil war and famine, poverty, floods, and all manner of disarray and terrible shortage of opportunity. And meanwhile, in the western United States, which you might find somewhere over here, there was a gold rush going on. There were railroads being built, and labor was needed, and getting rich quick seemed like an option, but at the very least, getting less poor and maybe being able to keep their families alive and improve their communities was a possibility. There were thousands of their countrymen who managed to come over despite the costs and dangers of passage, and despite the strictures of the Chinese Exclusion Acts, which was the only U.S. immigration policy to target a particular race or group of people for exclusion. And by the way, Chinese exclusion started in 1862 and wasn't completely lifted until 1965. So as you might expect, Chinese immigrants to the West stayed close together, partly for protection and partly for the power afforded by shared culture and pooled resources. Should just load that picture. When these fellows opened their business in 1887, the population of John Day's Chinatown was about 600, which is remarkable given that the population of John Day even today is about 1,700 people total. And Doc Hay, as the folks came to call him, practiced a form of Chinese medical pulse diagnosis and prescribed and prepared herbal medicine, as well as tending to the spirits and the ancestors and performing divination from his altars in the shop. And Long On, this fine-looking fellow, who spoke English well, tended to business relations, and enjoyed the luxuries of life, including gambling, carousing, racehorses, and cars. And there's a couple of their friends. Perfectly respectable ladies. Anyone from their families is here? No offense. Okay. By the time Doc Hay left Kamwatchung in 1948, about 5 years before his death, Chinatown was long gone, and for at least 3 decades, most of his patients had been white residents of the region for hundreds of miles around. And this is a map of the area. So here's teeny little John Day up in the high desert. Beautiful country, by the way. And this is the range of the patients that they saw, either by mail order or by traveling to them, which they often did. They would sometimes go to their houses and cook the herbs until the person was better. Yeah, service. One of the most interesting things to me about this story is the secret of Ying He and Long On's success in appealing to and gaining the trust of non-Chinese clients in a time of institutionalized racism and rampant anti-Chinese sentiment, and I wonder about the relevance of that success to our efforts to share Chinese medicine's remarkable power today. And as for the music that you might have noticed when you were coming in, which was some beautiful Ellington tunes, when the citizens of John Day opened up the Kamwatchung building 20 years after Ying He's death, once they realized it was theirs to preserve as a museum, they found the radio right next to the pulse feeling chair, the well-worn chair that hundreds of patients had sat in, and the radio right next to it. And it looks like the doctor, who was blind by this time, seems to have spent the majority of his life there towards the end of his life, just him and his radio. And in fact, Long On and Ying He apparently became such fans of the West and of life out here that, contrary to tradition, both chose to be buried in John Day rather than having their bones sent back to their native places to rest. We got to visit their grave when we were out there in March. It was really remarkable. All right, so now that we've set the scene a little bit, let's dive into some medicine knowledge. And you can see through the bars there the herbal dispensary, medicinary. And there's a little close-up. And at the time that Doc Hay and Long On set up shop here in John Day, which was about 1887, prepared patent formulas would have been familiar already to both the residents of Chinatown and the white Westerners in the region. And here we see some of each world's offerings as they are displayed at Kamwatchung. And close-up of a few of the common Western type goods. Swamp root, I don't know if you can see that guy's mutton chops, but a face you can trust, right? And we'll take a look at some of the many forms that Chinese patent medicine can take. And I'm going to take a breath. All right, so here we see some pills and pellets, and these are highly convenient ingestible form of Chinese herbal medicine. Excuse me for a moment, see if I can find my wax pill in here. Wax. No, maybe not. Oh well. And so pills and pellets are two different names for pretty much the same thing, and the pellets are okay, largely indistinguishable, but by their name, Dan, which is traditionally associated with alchemy and magic and ancient secrets and the quest for immortality. So pretty good marketing approach to label something Dan rather than the humbler Wan, which just means pills. Some pills are coated in wax for airtightness, as in that lower image. And if you encounter one of those, please don't eat the wax, but crack it open and find out what's inside. And let's see. And what you're getting right now is pochai pills, which are some of the tiniest little pellets, great for indigestion. Although we do not purport to diagnose or treat any illness or disease. And just to remind everyone of the relative convenience of taking medicine this way, here is the alternative. This is one of Dakei's formulas. And I was with some of my classmates yesterday when they were translating one of these formulas, and I think there were 71 herbs in it. Right. Somebody pointed out how much trouble she would get in clinic if she wrote a formula like that. But there was nobody supervising Dakei. Apparently she did a good job. What's that?
3 formula sheets.
Yeah, so this formula, in addition to being quite lengthy, requires specific cooking methods and quite a lot of time to prepare. And on one hand, this is generally considered to be the most effective way to use most herbal formulas. But on the other hand, one thing we often say in the Chinese medicine field is that the most effective formula is the one that the patient actually takes. So, if pills are what you're actually willing to use, they're going to work a lot better than the idealized bag of plants and minerals and maybe animal components that you never get around to cooking up and swallowing. And a little aside here, because of the way prescribing is done in Chinese medicine, these formulas, in whatever form, tend to be constructed in such a way that potential side effects of one herb are mitigated or counteracted by another or others, while desirable effects can be amplified by herb combinations. So in this image here of 6-flavor Rehmannia pills, we have 3 tonifying or nourishing herbs and 3 draining herbs to balance the action on the organs. Also, the method of prescribing takes into account the person as a whole, their environment, their emotions, their weaknesses, and strengths. So 6-flavor Rehmannia pills will have desirable effects on a variety of seemingly disparate conditions, as long as the underlying disharmony matches what this formula addresses. So overall, these pills behave very differently than the pills that most of us are used to from conventional Western medicine, which at this point in the medicine's development tends to focus very narrowly on one undesirable symptom or condition and frequently generates some problems even as they treat others. To summarize. All right, so who's next? Oh, fun. So powders. There are several reasons for preparing Chinese herbs in powder form. For example, some formulas, like the ones that we've already seen, are traditionally taken in powder form rather than cooked as tea. There's a formula called Yunnan Baya, which is a proprietary formula developed for battlefield use to stop bleeding on contact, so you can conveniently shake the powder right onto the wound. There are whole families dedicated to the production of snake powder, and I've got a book called Hong Kong Apothecary here that you can check out later. It has some information about those, snake powder families and the snake kings who produce them. And sneezing powder, like the one we see here, is designed to be taken in through the nose. And we can class it as a purgative, whose design is to trigger the body to expel the pathogen, and that's what this little brass container, is that the troop marching powder? Seems to be for. And next we have medicinal teas, which hopefully everyone's gotten a chance to sample, made from tea leaves soaked in herbs and dried to be easily reconstituted and taste good. And you showed a little package.
I did, yeah, I'm right there now.
Oh, look at that. So this is a fabulous package. This is how this tea is bundled. Little paper wrappers that you get to open up, a little box inside full of tea. So it's a really nice little ritual experience. This is something that we just bought a couple of weeks ago, and that is a package from the Camwatch Home. So these are a few formulas that have been in production for all of this time. Let's see, oils. Yay, are easy to apply to specific acupuncture points or to larger areas of the body, and easy to combine with massage in the clinic or use at home, and they can directly treat the location of pain. We'll hear more about this form in a little while. And we have plasters and salves, which keep the herbs in place and can treat pain or injury in the site of the cane. And we don't have an image of this, but there are also medicinal wines and other alcohol-based formulas. So herbs can be steeped in wine, and the properties of the wine itself affect how the herbs are absorbed and their properties. And wine also has medicinal properties in itself. It warms and moves and opens the pores to help the herbs penetrate the skin. So you might notice that each type of prepared medicine is packaged in a highly specialized way. A lot of intention has gone into the design of each of these containers, including considerations of how to keep the medicine safe, stable, and contained over time. More traditionally, each formula would be hand-prepared and ground or boiled or whatever the particular case may be. But during the Kam Wha-Chung era of moving toward mass production and international shipping, it becomes more and more important to have packages that are both uniquely suited to the preservation and presentation of their contents, and also distinctive and attractive enough to catch the eye and hopefully gain the trust of the user of the medicine. And so here is that same 6-flavor formula in its Kam Wha-Chung era packaging on the left there, and how you might find it today. That's a good idea. How's my pace? Am I using my New York voice or my Oregon voice?
Yeah.
Great. I accept. Alrighty. So this one's even better. Ooh, boy. Alright, so before we get on to the next topic, I'd love for us to all try it out if you're willing. So we can pass this little bottle around. Don't drink it, please. And anyone who wants to take a little sample on your finger, rub it on somewhere. Help yourself. If you have some digestive issues, you might try this point on the inside of your forearm, or anything to do with your chest constriction, any emotional anxiety kind of things. If you have any headaches or cold symptoms, you can try this guy between your thumb and index finger, or just anywhere that seems appealing. It's pretty strong, so small doses will do, right? Yeah, so I'm going to give you all a little while to try that out and just notice how it smells and how it feels and what it's like. We'll come back together and discuss. Try this stuff. How far away did it come from? Hong Kong. Coming in the future. Stay tuned. Actually, it does. Not cheap. Here, come off of you. Don't forget the boys in the back.
And whatever you do, don't touch your eyes before washing your hands. Just put that out there. Not
Or
touch
any
your
other
eyes
mucosal membranes.
before washing your hands.
What is this oil called?
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Oh.
So I want you to get a chance to try it out without any information to block your senses.
Man, now this whole room is perfumed. Now that it's gotten back that way, it's like a tide of aromatic oil.
Good choice.
That was the first eyebrow raise. I've done it another time.
So any guesses as to what's in there? Based on how it smells or feels?
Cinnamon.
What else? What's that?
Okay.
What'd you say? Anybody notice any sensations? Flu. Your headache's going away? Yeah. Any changes in your mood? Calmer. Kind of uplifting. Yeah. Nice. Oh, I'm so happy we did that. Thank you. So here is a list of the ingredients. Oh. Yeah. Hey, how about that? So neat. Cool. And you can keep enjoying that sensation. I find that it's warm and then also cool, but it stays warm at the same time. It's really interesting sensation. Dragon's blood. Dragon's blood is a resin. It's not actually. As far as I know, it comes from a plant. As far as I know. Yep. No dragon. How many dragons went into each bottle? I'll tell you a little bit of the story of this guy. It's called Wang Chunhua UE oil. And let's see, show a pretty picture. So Wang Chunhua was an enterprising Hong Kong resident in the 19th century, whose father was a devout Buddhist. And the father crafted items for use in altar worship, like lanterns and floral decorations and various trinkets. And the son, dragon. Dragons will have their revenge. Great. Use my outside. The son sold the items in the family shop. Wow. As the story goes, the elder Wang one day received a formula from an old nun living in a nearby nunnery that he was then able to use to heal his family's sunstroke, as well as apparently any other illnesses that they could come up with. So another son suggested the family start producing the oil for commercial sale, and he teamed up with a doctor to produce what would become Wang Chunhua UE oil. After giving this medicine as a gift to loyal customers for a while, the family started selling it, and it rapidly became more profitable than the original family business. So the Wang Chunhua medicine shop was born in Hong Kong, and evidently around the 1880s, the same time that the Kam Wah Chung was coming into being. So, interestingly, what was big in Dakei's hometown region, out in southeastern China, became popular in small town eastern Oregon at the same time as well. We could go back to that map. You can go back to that imaginary map we have. Think of how remarkable it is for this hot trend in Hong Kong to find its way over to, and I don't know how many of you have been to John Day, but it is small. Yeah, tiny. So it's really fascinating. So the oil was in steady production until 1945, when the chaos in China that resulted from Japanese occupation and that war became too much for the business to withstand.
Knock it off, dragons.
Terrible, terrible story. So the oil ceases to be for a few decades of instability and change, the Maoist regime and suppression of traditions, until Wang Yinglao, presumably a scion of that same family, managed to restart production in 1987. And this oil is wildly popular to this day in China, Singapore, and Malaysia. Though out here in the West, I'd never heard of it until I started researching the Kam Wah Chung collection. But I'm really glad I did, because I really like it. And there are at least 31 bottles of this that we found in the collection there. And until we've got all of the items translated and cataloged, we can only guess as to why there were so many, whether they just got a shipment in or it was extremely popular or what was going on. But it was high desert, a lot of cold weather, so it's understandable that a warm formula would be a big one there. So moving on to the packaging. This image shows what I think is one of the loveliest packages of this legendary oil that we found at the Kam Wah Chung site. You might not think much about if you aren't a graphic designer or in some related profession, but it looks like a lot of thought and intention has gone into this container. So we first of all have this striking, attractive paper box, which had a lot of fun labeling, marked in eye-catching and fortune-attracting red. prominently featuring the Longchenghua name up here, Longchenghua, as well as the UE oil name. And I think the printing style looks a little like the kind of design you see on money, which might be a subtle suggestion of the value and respectability of what's inside. And then the box top has become separated from the box here, but we can still see that it was sealed with this label marked Made in China. So it says across there in English, Made in China, which tells us a couple of things. And one is that this package was produced for export. So by the time it was made, it had become routine for traditional Chinese products to make their way to English-speaking countries. And the seal also functions as another subtle indication of trustworthiness. And having broken the seals on some of these boxes, especially this tea, was very complicated to get into, as well as my own bottle of UE oil in preparation for this presentation, I can tell you it adds to the impression that the contents being protected are very precious indeed, and that I'm gifted and fortunate to be holding it in my hand. It's a really interesting experience to go through all of these layers to get to the tea. Now on to the bottle itself. It's a glass bottle and presumably would have once been stoppered with cork and sealed with wax. Earlier in patent history, it was common to package medicines in porcelain. Glass is a bit less fragile and a fine container for the volatile and slippery substances in this particular formula. And again, it's attractively labeled, so there will be no mistake as to what you're holding in your hands. Oh, it's so pretty. Which brings us to this important looking document. And this is something we see in a great many packages containing Chinese herbal medicine patent formulas. Some come with instructions, which might be on this sheet, but almost more important than that is the guarantee coupon, asserting the authenticity of the product contained herein. Chinese commercial culture has traditionally been based on trust. You work with and trust people of your family and your clan and your hometown or village or province. For companies selling and marketing their products outside of these circles, it's still essential to demonstrate their trustworthiness. And so we have these coupons asserting the authenticity of the product. And here is another UE coupon, probably from later, based on the fact that there's a bit more English on it now. And it has this assertion of authenticity, which we see on all of the UE packages, sole manufacturer, as well as some other evocative and mysterious imagery. I have no idea what this is about, but I couldn't refrain from putting it in. We can't tell if this guy is smoking something, he's blowing a pipe, and there's magic coming out, and what Zeus is doing there is a complete mystery. If you have any ideas or insights, maybe you have to smoke the oil to find out.
Don't smoke the oil.
Do not smoke the oil. We recommend against it. Yeah. And often we see packages or coupons with the image of the face of the manufacturer, a face you can presumably trust, to accompany the name, which also carries those implications. So I don't know if you noticed that our little beautiful package here has this guy on it. They all do. What's on this? Oh yeah, there he is. More mustache, but right? Authentic. Let's see. And occasionally, we also see curses or threats, as on this lovely package of BD formula, which says, if we're lying about our claims, may we be rejected by heaven. And in the Kamwa Chung collection, we also found one stronger injunction along the lines of, if you counterfeit this formula, you will have small eyes, and your sons will be thieves, and your daughters will be prostitutes. Pretty serious about authenticity. Yeah. All right. How's everyone doing? Water time. It's so beautiful to be doing this here. Okay. Next stop. So, we've heard a bit about the medicine, and we're ready to tackle this mystery of how two enterprising gentlemen from small-town southeastern China ended up becoming so prosperous in the West that they were able to leave the equivalent of $250,000 worth of uncashed checks in their shop by the time they died because they just didn't need the money. So we can think about the art of self-promotion that supported the arts of medicine and community building at the Kam Wah Chunk. We can assume that Inge and Long An had good intentions to do healing work and promote the well-being of the people of both their native and their adoptive homes. But without the ability to spread the word and be attractive to their potential customers, they wouldn't have had much, especially once the Chinese population dwindled during the first decades of the 20th century. And incidentally, that dwindling of the Chinese population had a lot to do with the Chinese Exclusion Act. Very small numbers of Chinese men were allowed to immigrate, and almost no women, and naturalization was forbidden to all. And also, plenty of white Western residents were overtly hostile to the Chinese immigrants in their midst. We see that the Kam Wah Chunk building has metal shutters and a metal door that are full of bullet holes from the times when the white residents of the area would go on a bender and go shoot up Chinatown. So yeah, there was some overt hostility going on. So how did they manage to thrive in this environment? First of all, word of mouth, of course, was essential in a community like this. And this kind of network was familiar to Dak He and Long An, coming as they did from a culture that's founded on kinship connections and trust building. So Dak He saves someone's kid from dying of pneumonia, keeps a group of railroad workers from succumbing to the flu epidemic, and word gets around. And people are willing to trust them and even welcome them into their families. So that's one essential factor. And also the Kam Wah Chunk, in addition to being a medicinary, was also a general store that sold supplies in bulk to restaurants and other businesses. And this far out from the city, we might presume that so long as they have what the other business owners need with some consistency, they're going to patronize the shop. Not much competition for that. And then, perhaps most interesting, that dragon is driving a car. Must be a special day. Smart. Perhaps most interesting, we have the question of advertising. Long An was the marketing man of the duo, as well as keeping racehorses and other fun stuff like that. And he seems to have willingly taken on the style of advertising that is almost an end in itself, that has some disconnection from the product or service being promoted. So we have these images of Western life being affiliated with the Kam Wah Chunk company name. A couple of promotional calendars from the 1920s. Here is one that features a handy driving map of the state of Oregon, which goes along with Long An's fondness for motor vehicles. And incidentally, he opened and operated one of the very first auto dealerships in the state of Oregon. Huge fan. And here we've got an idyllic farming scene, and we're getting a little further now from the product and a little closer to the market. Local white folks tied to the land. I don't know if you can see these folks resting after a hard day's work with their proud white horses in the plowed field. And next, we see some charming images of fresh-faced kids going about their kid business. So what are we saying here? You can associate us with safety, family, freedom, that sort of thing. And finally, my favorite. Well, we could say that this is an image of abundant good health, representing what happens if you use Chinese medicine, but that's a bit of a stretch, I think. So this strikes me more as an attempt to draw an association between stuff that people already like, such as pretty young ladies with wholesome values, and the company and what it does. They want you to like them and trust them so they can stay in business, keep doing what they do. And what they do is important, life-saving work that serves their community, but in a way that their neighbors might not be able to understand yet, but might be open to if they give it a chance. And incidentally, there's a similar trend taking hold in China at the same time, with different images and associations, like maybe Shanghai cigarette girls in the place of pretty cowgirls, but the same desired effect. Our 1940s posters here, this one and that one, do mention Chinese herbs, but the others don't really have a word to say about what's on offer. Just a friendly reminder that we're here in Grant County and we care about your needs. And of course, this kind of advertising has become commonplace now and doesn't surprise us anymore. But I think it's really interesting to notice how indirect it truly is, and yet how widespread, and apparently how effective.
Can I ask why they weren't allowed to come to this country or become citizens?
That's a big question. Racism, fear, that's the real reason. Do you have anything more particular to say about it?
It's a great question that there's been no real apology for, and it's hard to say what the correct answer is, but, you know, it started with racism and fear and then turned into something that should have been repealed a long time before it was, and there has been no real apology for it. So, I don't know.
I've read that it was a lot of the fear of their diligence when seeing them work on the railroads. We were threatened as the lowly Americans that they would outwork us, and that they would, and they did. So there was resentment to that.
Yeah, but it's not really a rational policy as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, and also communism. When the communists took over in 1949, there was no real desire for us to allow floods of Chinese to start coming at that point as well. Although the fact that it was repealed before we opened up our relations again, I guess it was part of the civil rights. They were like, oh, we gotta take that one off the books too.
1965, it's incredible.
Yeah. That's its own lecture. MJ.
Yeah. And actually at the Interpretive Center at the Kamwatchung, where these pictures are from, there are also some of the posters of some of the advertising and political cartoons from that time that, yeah, have some pretty gross caricatures of Chinese people. So it's a really interesting, deep, confounding story. Worth investigating. So, thanks for asking. So I will just wrap up here with the name Kamwatchung, which was already on the property when Eihei and Floman acquired it. Looks like that. Oh, so pretty. And just like just about any phrase in Chinese, it can be interpreted in various ways. One interpretation we've heard is golden flower of prosperity, which sounds friendly and auspicious enough. But we can see another possible meaning here based on more modern coinage of the term for Chinese immigrants who came over for opportunities in the 19th century. And it's something along the lines of, come here and buy your shovels and get rich. Thank you, Beth Howland. So we've listed a few resources here if you want to learn more. I strongly recommend going to see the place for yourself if you can. Both the museum, which is the original building, and the Interpretive Center across the road. It's a fascinating piece of Oregon history where it intersects with Chinese medicine history. And I just think it's so neat to be aware of the fact, being someone who's going to be practicing Chinese medicine in Oregon, that the medicine was here long before what we first hear about it is in the 70s when some reporter went over to China and came back to tell everyone about acupuncture. Chinese medicine was here as long ago as the 1880s. So we have a long, proud tradition. It just seems to fit the landscape. But be sure to check their hours first because they're only open May through October to the public, the Kamwatchung. And you can also check out a present-day herbal pharmacy. There's one right around the corner on 3rd and Hooch that has lots of patents as well as beautiful jars of bulk herbs. And somewhere in secret there's some Jusha in there. Cinnabar, mercury-containing cinnabar. It's a very magical, legendary herb. It's hiding it though. Don't want anyone to eat it. And don't tell them I told you. There's also a great horse dispensary at Opam. And the excellent Wing Wing Herbs on Southeast 82nd Avenue is also a great place to check out some patents. And I'm proud to say that Chinese herbal medicine surrounds us here, and I hope that you've gotten at least a small taste of how accessible it is and how valuable, what a rich tradition we've received that is thriving still. And so, ta-da! Thanks so much for listening. I'm honored to share this with you all today. Who are you? I'm Dr. McComb, and I believe that now I am a master of acupuncture and Oriental medicine. Congratulations. Thank you. So, are there any questions before I go to heaven any clear day. Yes.
Are you technically stealing these people's formulas now? That sounds good.
What did you say?
So are you stealing their formulas now? The packaging warrants against
Scandalous. I was just sharing it.
Where'd you get that stuff?
This stuff I got at Wing Yeah.
Actually, both of those were, actually all of it, the poach I too, is from Wing.
Tea has about 1 million herbs in it. This one's basically a formula that was developed for epidemic diseases and flus and colds. So it's got a lot of the cooling, exterior releasing herbs. It's got a whole bunch of other stuff too, so you want to check it out. Yeah. Now that you've swallowed it, you can learn what's in it. That's how we do things around here.
For those familiar with the taste of, antibiotic herbs, it is remarkably sweet, which is the name of it, sweet harmonizing tea. So, yeah, it's about the best anti-cold formula I've ever tasted.
Plus it got caffeine in it.
Yes.
Yes.
So, if these were all formulas from there, who makes them now? Are people still working?
Yeah, so this one seems to be made by the same family after ceasing production for a while. The poach, I'm not sure about the other ones, but I'm guessing there's some continuity in production because part of the formula is the brand name. So, and a lot of them were produced in Hong Kong, and there's still a lot of factories there making this kind of stuff. You know anything more about that?
Well, Hong Kong was spared the interruptions of the communist period because during that time they were a British colony. So they did not have the same difficulty importing their product as they did from mainland China. There was a full interruption basically from 1949 to the 1980s, which is why herbalists stopped practicing because they could no longer obtain products. But Hong Kong would be an exception. And also a lot of them during that time of trouble moved to other Chinese communities in Malaysia and Singapore, so some of them are now manufacturing most of